Windy City Times has been the voice of Chicago's LGBTQ plus community since 1985. This year marks the news outlet's 40th anniversary of uplifting queer stories, reporting with pride, and chronicling LGBTQ plus history. You can visit windycitytimes.com/newsletters to sign up for the publication's weekly LGBTQ news updates. Jake Wittich is managing editor of Windy City Times, where he reports in-depth stories on Chicago's LGBTQ plus community and oversees that publication's growing newsletter operation. And also, the Chicago Journalists Association named him Journalist of the Year for 2025. He joins us now bi-weekly on Wednesday afternoons, Thursdays in Chicago. Jake, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
You've got some new reporting for us out of Chicago. Specifically, can we start with this article of an incident that happened at the Round1 Arcade? Give us the scoop on that.
Yeah, so there is a transgender man. He came forward publicly. His name is Lucian Bates, and Lucian and his fiance were going to a Round1 Arcade. It's like an arcade bar. I think they have go-karts at some of them at the North Riverside Mall, which is outside of Chicago. And the first thing they did when they got there was they went to the restroom because they live in Indiana, so they'd driven kind of far, and Lucian, who is a trans man, every time he uses the restroom in public, he has to make a choice. Like, am I going to use the men's room, which is the gender I identify with, but risk being clocked in there and harassed, or do I use the women's room, which some people might still perceive me as, and maybe have it's just a decision he has to weigh every time he's using the restroom in public. So he normally does opt to use the women's restroom, just thinking that he'll fly a little more under the radar there. People will perceive him as female and just not harass him. Unfortunately, the opposite happened this time around, and he and his fiance went into the women's room, and comes in a security guard and is just kind of like, "You're not allowed to be in here." And then Lucian and his fiance pressed like, "Why?" And the security guard just kept saying, "You know why, you know why." Like, she wouldn't flat out say it. And then she eventually said, like, "You are men, you can't be in this restroom. Show me your IDs. It has to match this gender." And Lucian refused to share his ID, but his fiance did, whose ID still says female on it. So, it's just silly. I don't know. So then it blew up from there. And then more security got involved. Then they're outside of the bathroom, and just about every security guard in the Round1 Arcade is there. Management's there, multiple staffers are there, and it's a whole scene now. Yeah.
Why did so many people get involved?
Beats me, and that's what Lucian was saying. It was a very drastic response. Lucian said to just using the restroom. So
has Round1 issued any statement? Did you get to talk to them?
I didn't really get to talk to them. I had reached out several times, and they sent me a pretty generic statement, essentially just saying, "We don't tolerate discrimination of any kind, whether toward our employees, guests, or third parties like the security vendors and contractors." So they just kind of said, "We don't tolerate discrimination," and they didn't really address this situation specifically. So that's about it.
So I'm just pulling up your article here, and I'm seeing that they said appropriate corrective measures have been taken. Did they give any indication of what that was?
No, and I sent a follow-up asking, like, what are the appropriate corrective measures? I followed up with Lucian, and I was like, "Have you heard anything?" Because he did file a complaint with Round1, and he hadn't heard anything. So I don't really know what these corrective measures are, but it's just a shame, This has got to be so stressful for Lucian. I'd imagine it's traumatizing now. Every time it's already got to be hard being a trans person using a public restroom, and now having this experience, it's got to be even harder mentally for Lucian. Like, is there any winning? If he used the men's room, he could just as easily have been harassed. So. And Round1 is like their place, their happy place, him and his partner. They love Dance Dance Revolution, so they're like regulars at this Round1 for years, and they've never had issues there. But for some reason, this one time, it just blew up, and now his favorite place is ruined.
Ugh. Is he saying that he's not going to go back there?
Not to this one specifically, but maybe there's other round ones, and he does have friends that manage a friend that manages a different round one, who was kind of an ally in helping get his complaint to the right people. So maybe he'll just drive the longer distance to go to that round one that's safer.
And so we had an incident like this in Minnesota at the Buffalo Wild Wings earlier this year, and the individual is filing a complaint with our Minnesota Human Rights Commission, which can then lead to some type of mediation, and if that doesn't go well, could lead to a lawsuit. Does Illinois have something similar to this at a state level where an individual can file? Because I know you all also have a Human Rights Act that is similar to ours.
Yeah, and we do have we have the Illinois Human Rights Act, which prevents discrimination on many things, including gender identity. And we do have a commission where you can report these things to. I asked Lucian, like, do you plan on taking legal action? Do you plan on reporting them to the government? Like, what steps do you want to take? And he's still kind of mulling it over. I think he wanted to see what happens when this story comes out. And I don't know, still deciding. Maybe a lawyer might come to him and be like, here's your options. But as of now, it doesn't sound like Lucian wants to take any steps like that.
Are there legal organizations in Illinois that, I mean, we have gender justice here in Minnesota where folks can reach out to for, I mean, not legal advice, but legal resources, I guess, of like where to go, but they can also request for representation. And in this instance, at Buffalo Wild Wings, they did take on that case. Are there organizations like that in Illinois that queer people could turn to say, hey, you know, this thing happened to me?
Yeah, I mean, we have Lambda Legal. I wonder if Lucian could go to them and talk about this and see if they might have any resources or advice there. But I mean, it's hard, and I don't think it's complicated. I think it's stupid that anyone should have to explain their gender to use a public restroom. He wasn't being disruptive in there. It was a literal in and out trip. They weren't loitering, anything like that. But maybe it could be complicated because he identifies as a man but was in the woman's restroom. I still think that's stupid, but maybe someone might make that a hurdle for Lucian in seeking justice.
Well, I mean, isn't it just fascinating where oh my God, they're like, we don't want quote unquote like men to be in the, okay, you got trans women using the women's bathroom, but then now trans men are trying to use the bathroom that's aligned with their
like, what do you want? Yeah, and that's the thing, they don't get it. Like they just don't get it.
they don't want to have to think about it, is my editorial, is that they don't want to think about it.
Well,
they don't want to acknowledge us. They don't want to even know that, you know, that trans people exist. So they just don't want to deal with it, and they want to create a situation where they're just not in public anymore. Because I think for a lot of MAGA folks, that would just be spectacular. And I think, frankly, for too many Democrats, they'd be like, they're saying, I would just prefer not even talking about this ever again in my life. But that's my editorial.
Yeah, reality check, trans people exist. They always have existed, and they always will. So, like, just accept them, address it, you know? Like, yeah. So
it is wild when you get people like Bill Maher right now that are like, why is everybody trans? And I'm like, the reason why 30% of kids are identifying as queer somewhere along the rainbow is that we're providing environments for that reality to happen.
Yeah. I mean, there were just as many queer. I'm so sorry, but I agree. There were just as many queer people before this. And the reality is many of them just couldn't come out, or they didn't know the language to express it.
And you know, Democrats may be sitting there and saying, I don't want to have to think about this. I don't want to think about this. Like, we can't talk about this anymore. We're losing elections because of it. This, of what you're reporting on right now, is why we need to be talking about it, because in the absence of real laws, in the absence of real equality, then you get this nonsense happening, and you're putting businesses in an impossible situation, and you're empowering people who are mean, cruel, dumb, ignorant, you pick your word. They're all of the above, only some of them, to do BS like this, to be reporting stuff that doesn't need to be reported.
Yeah, it's wild.
It's just harassment. I don't mean to say just harassment, but it is, the point is harassment, so that people go out in public, I think.